Hey, Kurt Snyder here. I am down in southern Arizona where I just wrapped up a roughly 500-mile ride over the past week following the US-Mexico border as closely as possible from California across the state to New Mexico. And this was a trip with my friend Lauren, who lives in Patagonia. He had the vision for this one, that living near the border, he wanted to experience the full length of the state's international boundary as closely as possible. And so we wrapped that trip up yesterday. It was a very eye-opening experience in so many ways. I'll share more about that in the weeks to come as I am able to process more of it mentally. But I want to share a little bit about my bike that I rode for this one, because this was a unique setup for me. This is a pivotless hardtail frame set up as a drop bar bike, which for this route that we followed, it was, like I said, about 500 miles. It was a big mix of everything from chunky Jeep roads to well-maintained gravel roads to, we had about 100 miles of sand in the first day and a half. It was all rideable, but very slow going pace-wise for that, and had some pavement along the way. So riding-wise, it was quite a diverse route. And I wanted to experiment with a setup sort of like this one. So built this bike up, share a little bit about the setup since it's a new one for me, like I said. So again, pivot-less hardtail frame. I've ridden this as a flat bar mountain bike for years and kept the Fox 34 suspension fork on here because I love front suspension, and went with some of the Redshift handlebars that have a little extra rise in here, and Shimano GRX shifters mated to XTR single piston brakes down there, GRX rear derailleur, and a 1x12 drivetrain on here with a 1051 cassette and a 36 tooth chainring on here. So that was a fantastic setup. All of that mated together really easily and smoothly. I think if I did it again, 36 tooth chainring is bigger than I need, but did the job for this one. I've got some Industry 9 TR230 wheels on here, and these are on the new Solix mountain hubs, and this is a little bit beefier wheel set than I've used in the past. I wanted slightly wider rims, and I've got some other plans for this bike that will also require a pretty heavy load later in 2025, so went with a beefier wheel set for all of that. Tires, that was a big question mark for this one. The biggest I could run on this bike are 2.6s in the rear, and ended up going with 2.4 Aspens. I had a pair that were pretty worn out, and this was a good way to completely wear them out. They're a generously wide 2.4 and aired down to, I don't know, probably 10 psi, 8 psi for the sandy stretches. Everything was completely rideable, so these did great for that. What else? This position with these handlebars, you can see this is a pretty high handlebar setup. Here it was really comfortable. It's exactly what I want for a longer trip like this, where you're literally in the saddle all day long. Ran my go-to Ergon SMC Sport Gel saddle on a carbon pivot post, and pivot runs a 27.2 diameter post on this bike so that it's got some flex built into it, which is very intentional from a comfort perspective, and I really enjoyed that. Got the Ergon gravel bar tape up here, which was really nice to have for all the vibraty washboard sections and rockier sections. And as far as luggage goes, on here, this is the Old Man Mountain Divide rack. I've taken this specific rack on dozens of trips now. It's quite the workhorse. I had Revelate Nano Panniers on here that basically carried food, cook kit, my Tyvek ground sheet in here, a bunch of clothing, and a few other assorted goodies in there. This is the little Revelate Stout seat bag. This literally just has a tarp in it, which we didn't set up a single night, so this never even opened up on the trip, but just in case there was rain or nights that looked like there'd be heavy frost, we had a lightweight tarp for shelter. Frame bag basically carried this top part set up for 3 liters of water in a Hydropack Seeker bladder. I've also got a Hydropack water filter in here that I used. This was mostly food and poles for the tarp and stakes down there. Hydropack Recon 1 liter bottle down under the down tube, and I added 2 Hydropack water bottles on the fork that could each carry 30 ounces in there. So I had total water capacity of a little over 5 liters for this trip and definitely use that for quite a number of sections. What else? Snacks lived up here. This is a Revelate pronghorn setup on the handlebars, and that was basically sleep kit, clothes for at night, sleeping pad. I had a 30-degree Western Mountaineering Summerlight sleeping bag in there, which was just enough for the nights that got down to upper 20s or freezing, somewhere right in that range. And we ended up, because the days are so short right now, we rode at night a fair bit, maybe, I don't know, probably 2 hours an evening on average. And for that, had my trusty Phoenix BC 26R handlebar light. This, with all that night riding, running it on low, didn't even get down below 75% battery capacity in that. So that was really kind of no-brainer. Just bring this, don't even need any extra batteries. I had one, but didn't need any for that. And then had the Phoenix headlamp that I always use, and use that for riding a bit and mostly just around camp. What else? That was it, pretty much. This setup for this kind of ride was absolutely perfect. I really enjoyed, and folks that have been running drop bars for this kind of riding for years will laugh, but I really enjoyed all the multiple hand positions, which I'm not used to having on a mountain bike. And I think the slightly higher handlebar setup than I've run on drop bars before, mostly on gravel bikes, was really good for this, and wider bars than I usually run were great for the more technical, rougher sections. So I'm going to leave this bike set up just like this, I think, for probably all of 2025, because I've got some other trips with a lot of, thousands of miles of this kind of riding on the calendar for next year. So if anyone's thinking about a drop bar mountain bike, this is one very comfortable way to go. And this setup is, in my opinion, pretty dang perfect for me. Let me know in the comments if you have other questions about this setup, or specifics on gear, or on the kind of mating of the Shimano GRX, XT, XTR components on here, anything like that. Happy to answer those. All right, happy pedaling.